Good evening and welcome to Lawyers on the Line. I'm Sean Quinn, a partner at the Falsani Balmer, Peterson, Quinn, and Beyer law firm, and this evening's moderator. The main topic for tonight is legal aid and the volunteer attorney program. Providing legal services and representation to Minnesota's low-income residents is an ongoing battle. Our local legal aid and volunteer attorney programs are the forefront of that struggle. I'm pleased to welcome tonight's panelists. Dori Streit, Executive Director of the Volunteer Attorney Program, Gwen Updegraff, Managing Attorney of Legal Aid Service of Northeastern Minnesota, and Jim Balmer of Falsani Balmer Law Firm. Dori, Gwen, and Jim will respond to your questions about legal aid and the Volunteer Attorney Program. Please call us with your questions at 218-788-2844, or if that's long distance for you, call our toll-free line at 1-877-307-8762. So, welcome everyone. Let's get to the heart of the matter. Dori, you're closest, so I'll start with you.
Sounds good.
What is the Volunteer Attorney Program?
The Volunteer Attorney Program is a nonprofit organization that provides pro bono legal services to low-income individuals in Northeastern Minnesota.
Okay, pro bono, what does that mean?
Pro bono means for free. So attorneys, private attorneys, volunteer and provide free legal services to low-income individuals.
Okay. Now, Gwen, you work at Legal Aid. What's Legal Aid versus Volunteer Attorney Program?
Well, the kind of work we do is similar, but Legal Aid is also a nonprofit organization. We're not a government agency, but rather than using volunteers, we have staff. So we're a staff program. We have 5 attorneys on staff in our Duluth office, and we also have offices in Virginia and Grand Rapids, and we have satellite offices in Brainerd and Pine City. And people can contact us, and if people are meet our eligibility guidelines, in other words, they're low income, and they have a civil as opposed to a criminal problem, then we can try to help them.
Okay, so the difference sounds like you're almost like a law firm, except your clients are not paying clients, where Dori, you are recruiting volunteers to provide assistance.
Correct.
Okay.
And if I may add, there are a significant number of low-income individuals that don't receive legal services because there are limited legal services available in the state of Minnesota. In our region, in Northeastern Minnesota, we have LASNM, the Legal Aid of Northeastern Minnesota, and we have the Volunteer Attorney Program. For every one legal aid attorney in the state of Minnesota, there are 7,000 low-income individuals.
Okay, so if every low-income individual received their appropriate legal services, each lawyer would have to handle 7,000 cases. Can't be done.
That's correct.
So there's a tremendous need for the private bar to volunteer and help address that significant gap.
Okay, and Gwen, you mentioned if clients meet your eligibility guidelines, and you said meaning low income, is there like a number, a bright line?
Yeah, we use 125% of federal poverty guidelines. So for a single individual, that would be right around $1,200, and for a household of 2, that would be around $1,600 per month.
Okay. And then what about for Volunteer Attorney Program, Dori? What's the line for your clients?
We actually go up to 200% of the federal poverty guidelines. Part of the reason is the Volunteer Attorney Program receives state funding. We don't receive federal funding for our legal services, whereas Legal Aid receives federal funding, so they have a more stringent income eligibility guideline.
Okay. Now, Jim, you're a private lawyer.
Yes.
You don't work for Legal Aid.
Right.
But you volunteer taking on cases, correct?
Yes.
Why would anybody do that who's a private attorney?
The practice of law is a profession, not a business. Most of us that entered the practice of law did so because we wanted to help people. Now, we want to make a good living too, and most of us are able to do that. But we have an obligation as members of the legal profession to help people who are unable to afford lawyers that will take them into court. We have an obligation to help those who need legal services regardless of their ability to pay for it. Now, we can't afford to spend all of our time volunteering for free, otherwise we'd go broke and we'd have to close up our practices. But when we can, each lawyer ought to be willing to step up and help somebody who is too poor to afford the lawyer's services on their own, or who doesn't have a claim that will generate a fee out of the proceeds.
And do you treat those clients that you're representing through the volunteer program versus a paying client any different or in any way?
I treat them the same, and I think most lawyers in Minnesota do also.
Now, someone in the audience is watching, hey, I think I need legal help. How do they come to either of your organizations?
Well,
go ahead, Dori.
Sure. With the volunteer attorney program, they can call our organization. We're open Monday through Friday. Our phone number is 723-4005. Jot that down. So you can call, and at that point, we do an intake to see if folks are eligible for our services, so income eligible. And we also check to make sure that the matter would be venued in our service area. And then we try and provide some, at least, advice at that initial level.
Okay. And the service area for the volunteer attorney program is what?
Northeastern Minnesota. It's an 11-county stretch right now.
Okay.
So.
All right. And then Gwen, how about for people that are seeking help through the legal aid?
Well, we have a phone number, 623-8100, and we're located in the Ordine building on the 3rd floor, 424 West Superior Street, and we are open 8:30 to 4:30. Except we're closed over the lunch hour. People can call us, people can stop by, and somebody will talk to you and see if you're financially eligible and if you're calling with the kind of a problem that we can help you with.
Okay. And you mentioned earlier, Gwen, that if it's a civil matter, and I take it that also
Yes.
applies for the volunteer attorney program, you're not helping people who are accused of crimes.
That's correct.
Okay, that's
It's
where we
just
have
civil
the
legal
public
services.
defender's office for those who can't afford that.
Right.
Now, Gwen, as I understand it, the legal aid program is also developing a self-help program for people who don't necessarily want to hire a lawyer, but are at least looking for some guidance while they represent themselves.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, I'm very excited about this. We got a grant through the St. Louis County Law Library. The state of Minnesota has developed a lot of packets, form packets, for people who can't afford an attorney but end up in court somehow, whether through a divorce or an eviction or trying to get a criminal expungement or various kinds of things that people just end up in court for, and they end up having to represent themselves because they can't afford an attorney. So there are a lot of form packets available on the Minnesota courts' websites, and some of them are easier to fill out than others. And so this staff person that we're going to have, it's an attorney at the Duluth, St. Louis County Law Library in Duluth, is going to be there, I believe starting May 1st from 8 in the morning until 4:30. And she's going to be available to help people fill out those forms.
Okay. And make sure these people at least are headed in the right direction.
They're headed in the right direction. She'll be able to answer questions about court procedures, you know, how do evictions go, how do divorces go.
But not necessarily to provide legal advice.
No, she's not going to be anyone's attorney, and she's not going to be able to say, well, in your situation, here's what you need to do. But she can steer you towards the resources that you need.
Okay. Jim, we got a caller, I believe from Duluth, wants to know, you know, you've been selected as a volunteer attorney, you got the case. How far are you going to take the case?
Oh, I'll take it as far as it needs to go. I had one case where I represented a guy for free, and we tried the case 3 or 4 times, and we went to the Court of Appeals 3 times.
Okay. Kept coming back for another trial? And
Yeah. It was a very contentious case. And I just took it as far as it had to go. And I don't know any lawyer around here who takes a volunteer case who would do any differently. I don't know any lawyer that would say, hey, this is where I get off. When we sign on for the whole ride.
Gwen, another caller from Superior wants to know, are there programs like your program, like Dori's program, across the bridge in Wisconsin?
Wisconsin has a legal aid program, several legal aid programs. The one that serves the Superior area is called Wisconsin Judicare. I don't have their contact information with me, but if you just look up Wisconsin Judicare, I believe their office is in Wausau, and there are volunteer attorneys in the Superior area.
Okay. And Dori, another caller would like to know, does the client get to pick who their volunteer attorney is? Excellent question.
It would be great if it could work out that way, but unfortunately, that's not always an option. So we certainly will listen to folks if they express a preference for who their attorney, who they'd like to connect with as a volunteer, but we can't guarantee that they're available or able to take the case.
Okay. How do you go about selecting, somebody comes in, they qualify for the services, they have family law, I assume, is the number one type of case. How do you go about selecting who you're going to assign the case to, who's going to be the volunteer attorney?
It's certainly an art. There's a number of attorneys that have expressed an interest in being available volunteers for family law files, and so we connect with them to see if they're available and if they're willing to take new cases. And so it sort of just depends. We really work to establish nice individual relationships with each of our volunteers to make sure that they have positive pro bono experiences. And so we try to respect their preference for caseloads and the types of cases that they'd like to take as volunteer files.
Okay. So if Jim calls you and says, Dori, I'd be happy to take on some family law cases, but I don't want any bankruptcy cases, that'd be okay with you?
Absolutely.
Okay. So Jim, you're a personal injury lawyer.
Yeah.
Those are not the type of cases that are going to come to you through the volunteer attorney program.
Typically not. They generate a fee, so they wouldn't be eligible for help either from legal aid or from the volunteer attorneys.
Okay. So a client comes to you and Dori sends a client to you, finds out you're a personal injury lawyer and they have a family law case. Are you going to be comfortable representing somebody in a family law claim? Yeah. Versus, I mean, you know what I mean.
Yeah, it depends. It depends on the complexity of the matter. Basic things I can help with, and the volunteer attorney program has some training for all of us that will help us and equip us to deal with basic family law problems. Now, if it becomes really complex or complicated and it's beyond the understanding of a lawyer with basic knowledge of family law, then maybe I'll be in over my head. But most of the time, that's not a problem. Most of the time, the family law issues that are presented to us are pretty readily understandable by an attorney with proper legal training and a little experience in the practice.
You've been trained at least well enough to recognize the issues and know what to do.
Oh, yes, yes, and I think most of us have been. We can identify concerns, problems, things that the potential client needs to address in most areas of the law that would come to the volunteer attorney program or legal aid.
And Dori, Jim mentioned assistance. What kind of assistance does the volunteer attorney program give to the lawyers to help the clients?
Right. Aside from the trainings that Jim mentioned, we also have a mentor match program. And so if a newer attorney or an attorney that wants to try and practice in an area that they don't do every day is interested in taking that type of volunteer file, we will connect them with a mentor, so an attorney who has a lot of experience in that area, and the attorney will serve as they'll call and talk to them and ask them questions along the way to make sure that they're doing things correctly and they feel competent in their representation. We've had a lot of really positive experiences with the Mentor Match program.
Okay. Now, Gwen, you mentioned you've got 5 attorneys on staff in Duluth, I think you said.
Yes.
And these are people that are actually paid employees of the legal aid, but you're not getting fees from the client.
Correct.
Where does legal aid get its money? How do you get funded?
Well, we're a nonprofit, so like most nonprofits, we write grants. We get some dedicated funds from the federal government, from the Legal Services Corporation, and we also get a large part of our funding from the state of Minnesota. But we also get a lot of foundation grant, St. Louis County. It's a hodgepodge.
And Dori, there are no employees of the volunteer attorney program who are taking cases, but you have employees that run the program, including yourself.
Yep.
How does the
There's 5 full-time employees at the volunteer attorney program,
And
serving the whole region.
and they're wonderful employees
They're
too.
wonderful.
How do you get your funding?
Well, we, like Gwen and like Legal Aid, we receive funding from the state of Minnesota. Most of our money comes from the state, but we also receive money from other wonderful grants and private donations and foundations. We actually also do some private fundraising, and we have a fundraiser coming up on April 25th called Lollapalooza.
All right, I'll bite. What's Lollapalooza?
So it's our annual fundraiser where we have local justice partners, judges, and private and public sector attorneys and other folks involved with the legal system come together and do some musical performances. And they have some really amazing talent. This year it's at Clyde Iron Works, like I said, April 25th, 6 p.m. And this is a great chance for the entire community to come out and support our mission. We have a wonderful silent auction, there's a dinner. It's a really fun event.
You look.
Yeah, did you talk to Bridgman's about that name? I'm old enough to remember when Bridgman's had a Sunday named the Lollapalooza.
Yeah, I know.
And I ate one once and
Yeah.
was sick for a week, but it was great when I ate it.
Well,
Bridgman's was actually at our first annual Lollapalooza.
Really?
But this year we're taking it a little bit of a different direction, and we're doing a dinner at Clyde Iron. So.
Okay, all right.
Well, we're
Just
not
thought
gonna
I'd ask.
We're not going to say any more things about good or bad.
I don't know anything
them.
about property rights in
Yeah.
trade names. Yeah.
So, Jim, a caller from Scanlon wants to know, am I getting a low-quality attorney if I'm getting a volunteer attorney? I guess that's kind of a softball question, but go ahead.
It is. I don't think anybody gets lesser legal representation just because they went through the volunteer attorney program. Not all lawyers are created equal. Some of us are stronger in one field than another. Some of us have strengths in court and not in the office, and so on. But I'm sure that the caller is not going to get a lower quality of representation merely because they went through the volunteer attorney program.
We have
Right.
a number of clients who call our office with wonderful feedback about their experiences with their volunteers, and they will say specifically that they felt like they were paying their attorney because their attorney treated them with such respect and was a true advocate for them.
Excellent. And I take it in your office, Gwen, I mean, the 5 staff attorneys in your office, including yourself, all highly skilled.
I like to think so. One advantage of having a law firm, which is dedicated to what's traditionally been called poverty law areas where low-income people tend to have a lot of legal problems, is that we really develop an expertise in the areas that we practice. And we have a very symbiotic relationship with the volunteer attorney program because they work with private attorneys who have expertise in a lot of other areas where we don't. So when we do get low-income people who have problems with, say, taxes or probate or real estate, which we really don't have the expertise in, but they can find lawyers who do.
Excellent. Another question for you, Gwen, a caller from Duluth. What if my ex, I assume this is a divorce proceeding, has already consulted with a volunteer attorney? Is that when maybe a legal aid attorney can step in, assuming that there's, they qualify?
Well, that is one of the way the two programs work together. It's called conflicts. If two people are suing each other, maybe in a divorce, and one side uses legal aid, we're a law firm. We can't represent both sides, even if both sides are equally eligible and both sides need representation. So then the other side can contact the volunteer attorney program, vice versa, and vice versa.
Okay. And this question, I think, goes more to eligibility than anything else, but the caller from Cloquet says, I'm a Native American, and I'm wondering if I qualify for representation because I've been discriminated against through either of your programs. And what I heard from your answers was it's really not a matter of race, creed, color, or the type of case, it's income eligibility.
And I'd just like to add that our organization has a number of legal advice clinics, and we will talk to people about virtually any substantive issue except criminal matters. And so if this individual has a question about discrimination, they can certainly contact our organization and sign up for one of our Ask an Attorney programs.
Okay. All right, another caller from Duluth wants, I'll start with you, Gwen, and then I'll go to you, Jim, same question. Do you make house calls if I can't leave the home? So does legal aid go to the homes of their clients?
We have been known to make house calls, although usually it's because, we have to go to someone's house because, it's a housing issue and we need to take pictures of the things that are wrong. Occasionally, if someone really needs help and they have absolutely no way of getting to our office, we will go to a client's house.
Jim, what about you? You have a client that's a volunteer attorney program client, so you're not going to get paid for your driving either. You're going to go visit them if you have to?
I'll give the same answer she gave. There are a number of reasons why making a house call for a lawyer is usually not a very good idea. I won't go into all of them now. Suffice it to say that if there's no other way to give proper legal advice to the person and they're otherwise eligible and they need the help, there's a way that can be found to do that. But it's typically not something that certainly I favor or recommend to other lawyers.
Okay.
And just to add, if somebody needs legal advice, they're certainly welcome to call our organization. And if they're unable to attend one of our Ask an Attorney programs in person, we do make accommodations for that and can connect them with phone advice with a private attorney.
Okay. And you mentioned Ask an Attorney program. Describe what that is.
So the Ask an Attorney program is our monthly advice clinic. We have 14 monthly advice clinics around the region. In Duluth, we have one every Wednesday at the St. Louis County Courthouse. And the other locations and times of the month are on our website, which is volunteerattorney.org. You can call our organization too, and we'll give you all the times and dates of our Ask an Attorney programs. We have private attorneys like Jim attend, and they provide anybody who is eligible for legal advice for up to 15 minutes. And at that point, the attorney is trained to make a decision to determine if that person is eligible for further services from our organization. So it's a place to go and receive legal advice, but it also is the forefront of our intake process with the volunteer attorney program.
Okay. Another question. Caller writes, I've worked in law offices. We've helped legal aid people. Oftentimes they have unrealistic needs. Call all the time. How do we deal, or how do your programs deal with clients who maybe have unrealistic expectations? So, Gwen?
I suspect I'd give the same answer as any attorney, except, I suppose in a private law office, when a client is getting billed for every minute they're on the phone with their attorney, they might have a disincentive to call. It's not that big of a problem. Sometimes we have to cut a call short or not take a call, but there are ways.
Okay. And You just have to deal with the situation. I mean, it's just
You do.
regardless of whether it's someone on legal aid or otherwise.
That's right.
Okay. Jim, fair?
Yeah, that some people they become so focused on their legal problem they can't think of anything else. And then they make calls that are really unnecessary, and you have to explain that to them and explain that we can't represent you and get the work done if we're on the phone with you all the time. Most people understand that.
And most people need to be heard
That's true.
when they're in crisis.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we only have about 45 seconds left, so Dori, I'll give you the last question. You mentioned this statistic of one lawyer for every 7,000 Minnesotans in poverty. How do you prioritize which cases to give help to versus those that you cannot?
Our organization works to ensure that we are removing imbalances in the justice system and ensure that all individuals that can have access to justice do.
Okay. And if someone's got a court in court, they get a priority versus someone who's not, perhaps?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, that's all the time we have tonight. Remember, you can watch our show again online at www.wdse.org or on my law firm's website, Falsani Balmer, Peterson, and Quinn. If you have additional legal questions, you can access the Volunteer Attorney Program's Ask an Attorney service, as Dori mentioned. Please join us again next week when we will be talking about workers' compensation. I'd like to thank our panelists for their expertise this evening, and thank you for watching. I'm Sean Quinn. Good night.